So we're all on this call for the same reason, I think, which is for personal growth. That's how this was advertised. And so I believe that that's why we're here. And that's something that each and every one of us is likely passionate about, in their lives. And, I know for me that, sometimes I feel like, yeah, I keep Torah, I keep Torah and mitzvos, and I'm hopefully try to be a God-fearing Jew. But sometimes it becomes, like how do I grow? Like how do I level up? Like what's my path? What's my journey? What am I supposed to be doing? How do I kind of accelerate, my personal growth? And so that's really what I want to touch on today. Because sometimes we get lost or we're stuck and we're doing the right things, but we don't feel like we're definitely moving forward or on the right path. So that's the roadmap that I hope to lay out for ourselves today. So we're gonna first start with the idea of this time of year. Okay, so we're about a week away from Tisha B'Av, and we're in this time of mourning, and we're mourning the destruction. We all know we're mourning the destruction of the temple of the Beis Hamikdash, and so the question is, why don't we just get over it already? Like I know, obviously I'm leading to the answer, right? But if it was something that was just in the past, then we'd actually be expected to just get over it, right? Something terrible happened, and all right, and now, right, we're resilient. Jews are resilient. We move on, right? And so the idea is that it's not in the past, right? And we're still actually suffering, right? Anybody who doesn't have the Beis Hamikdash rebuilt in their day, it's as if it was destroyed in their day, right? And I think that that's a lot of people are familiar with that. So there's a really cool Gemara that I was not familiar with that I came across. I'm not sure what the source is because I listened to it in a shiur, but it says, maybe somebody here knows better than me. It says, I'm just going to read it. It says, Rabbi Alexandri says in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, anyone who has da'as or da'at, right? It's as if the temple was built in his days. And anyone who does not have da'at, it's as if the temple was destroyed in their days, right? So this is new, right? The whole, this idea of da'at being the key, right? And if I do, right, and what we're hearing here, for me, this was mind blowing. If I have dot, I'm good. Right? If I have dot, I'm growing, right? I'm for at least for me personally, it's as if I have the Beis Hamikdash, right? So to me, this was like, ooh, if I have dot, then I have the key to personal growth, at least, right? At least for myself. And so I want to know more about this das, right? I want to know more about dot because it sounds to me like if I have dot, I can achieve growth, I can achieve greatness, at least on a personal level, and hopefully that spreads even further, right? So what is das? What's dot? If you want to, if you feel like you want to just throw it into the chat, you can feel free. If any ideas of what dot is, right? So the term, right? So dot or das is often, and I'm going to switch back and forth between Kabbalistic dot and yeshivish das, but right. So dot Kabbalistically is well, people someone says common sense is dot, right? Yeah, it could be phrased that way. So das Kabbalistically is the synthesis of chachma and bina, right? So, okay, so now we have another question. What's chachma and what's bina, right? So we can't just translate das as like knowledge because there's obviously nuances here that we want to be tapping into, right? So if chachma and bina together create more das, and das for me means that I really have, I have the Beis Hamikdash in my day and I have personal growth. Let's explore this a little bit, right? So chachma, right? Chachma is not facts or knowledge, right? Collecting facts or knowledge is useless in and of itself, right? So Chachma represents the realm of thoughts and ideas, right? The spontaneous generation of thoughts, ideas, concepts, downloads, right? And it's based off of collected information, right? It's also based off of perception. It's also based off of experiences, but it's like, it's developed through our experiences, through knowledge, through collecting information. And then we get this insight, right? So we can call it like a spontaneous insight, right? Or a spontaneous download, right? Or right, just thoughts, right? And so we can concentrate, right, and create new thoughts, or we can have random thoughts, but they kind of get downloaded into us. Bina, right? Bina we can think of as and everything that's going on in our body, like through our outside experiences. So our sensations, our intuition, our perceptions, our emotions, right? And all of those also we collect through different experiences. That we can have an emotion because of our thoughts, right? We can have an emotion because of our outside experiences. sensations, perceptions, smells. All of this is right intuition. Everything that's going on in our body, also often very spontaneously, is bina, right? So then the synthesis of the two, right, and the synthesis of the two would be das. I would translate as a deep presence or awareness or mindfulness, right? So it's right, and it's not instinctive, right? You can't be mindful instinctively, something that you have to do, right? You can't be present instinctively, something that you have to do. You can't be conscious instinctively. It's something that you have to do, right? And so you'll notice that Chachma and Bina are like reflexive, right? And Dat is when we're not acting reflectively or right or reflexively or instinctively, right? Which means to me that the secret to Dat and the secret to rebuilding our personal temple, right, is creating this like conscious presence and this conscious awareness rather than just responding automatically, reflexively with our emotions or with our thoughts, right? And so integrating this presence and this right awareness or this knowingest of knowing, right? It's not just knowing, it's knowing, it's a presence, and it's right, it's deeper than that. So on a basic level, right? So let's talk about our day to day. And if you want, you can throw things into the chat, things that we might be challenged with on our day to day. Just if you want to take a minute, and this way we can kind of use it as context. It could be looking for a job. It can be, people in our life that are difficult. It could be wanting to lose weight and, feeling frustrated. It could be wanting to take better care of ourselves. It could be black and white thinking, perfectionism, right? Think of a challenge. It could be from the outside, right? Our circumstances, or it could be from, something going on inside of us that we feel challenged with, right? So now let's take how we perceive this. On a basic level, on a maybe non-growth level, we think to ourselves, like, if I only didn't have this problem, I could, right, life would be so great. I could grow. I could have so much more, so much more going on, right? If not for this issue, or if not for this challenge, right? This challenge is really weighing me down, right? So that's a really basic level. It's not a personal growth type of level at all, right? So on leveling that up a little bit, we might take this challenge. Let's say I'm very disorganized, or I'm very right, or I'm very right, or I have a challenging communication with my husband or something like that, right? So I might be able to perceive it as an opportunity for growth, right? And that would be even another, that would be already a level, right? But what I want to posit here, what I want to pose here is deeper, and it's going to tie in this idea of Dat, right? So the idea is that a lot of times the struggles that we're having right on the outside that look like struggles on the outside, right? So a kid got kicked out of school, or right, or my boss is riding me, or whatever it is, right? A lot of times there's something, it's really just a manifestation of something deeper that's going on inside of us that hasn't been addressed, that can actually bring us to a new level of healing, a new level of growth with our Dat and with our presence. So I'm going to explain what I'm talking about. And I'm going to say this, I just want to, like, before I jump into it, I want to say that I'm not diminishing anybody's challenges, and I'm not dismissing them, and I'm not minimizing them, and I'm not trying to be trite and say, and just say, well, here's the key to everything. But I think that it's a perspective that could be, powerful and empowering for a lot of people. So the idea is that we have these outer experiences, right? And they trigger us to feel a certain way. And that feeling, right, that feeling could be something that's so much deeper and so much, from it could be from our childhood. It could be from, right? So if I get annoyed at my husband because he turns away from me, right, and now I want to, right, so I might think that my work is to talk nicely to him and to, right, or to forgive him, or to swallow it, or to get over it, right? But if I look at it a little closer, I want to ask myself, what just happened for me? What just happened for me? He walked away while I was in the middle of talking, right? Nothing crazy. Oh, my face is too close to the screen. Thank you. So nothing actually, right? Nothing crazy happened, but I felt, right? I felt triggered, right? I had an emotion going on inside of me, right? A sensation or an emotion, right? That would be a bina. And I had a thought process. He doesn't care about me, or right, he never pays attention to me, right? Again, instinctive emotion, right? An instinctive and an instinctive thought process, right? Now, if I look deeper, what's going on here, right? It might be fear. It might be some fear, right? Or it might be a fear of abandonment that I had, or not getting enough attention, right? From when I was a child, or a belief, right? A belief that my needs won't be met, or I could never be understood, right? And this belief could be a very old belief from when I was a child, from 11, 12 years old, right? Or this emotion of, not getting enough attention or not being seen could be from when I was 6 or 7 years old, right? And so what's going on here really is my husband walks away in the middle of a conversation, he walks away. I get this instinctive emotion or this instinctive, right, thought process, like these downloads, right? I get this awareness of something's going on here for me. Something's going on here for me, right? So I get this presence now. I get this presence now of this is my trigger. Not only that, this feeling, this emotion has been waiting to be processed, maybe since I'm 7 years old, or maybe since I'm 11 years old, right? And it's just been kind of buried or shamed or blamed or distracted or this or that. And it's just literally looking for an opportunity to come up and be seen, right? And be held, be dealt with, be, whatever process, whatever process we use to, right, for healing, but it needs to come up. It's required, right? It's required. And so coming at my triggers with this presence and with this awareness, to me, that's massive personal growth. Right. To me, that's massive. Right. And then it's so much less about, my husband and, how he never listens to me. And it's not even about communication or anything like that, because nothing actually, nothing crazy actually happened. But I was triggered in my emotions, in my sensations, in my chachma, in my bina. And I come to it with this awareness of that, right? Just being aware that this is what's going on for me is already a level of dot, right? Is already a level of expansiveness. It's already a level of presence, right? And that, right, and having that understanding will totally expand, right? Will totally expand me, right? We could see how this could lead to having the temple rebuilt in our days, at least for us, right? Imagine if our triggers, right, all and our circumstances and our triggers were right, brought up all the stuff that needed to be brought up, processed all the stuff that needed to be processed. How healthy would we be, right? And imagine having that kind of presence all the time, right? That as soon as we feel something, right, or we get this belief, right, we trigger a limiting belief or something, right, something that's an ongoing limiting belief or an emotion that's right, that's old, that's waiting to be processed. Imagine clearing that all up. Imagine allowing it to be there, noticing that it's there, being okay that it's there, right? And whatever. And sometimes it's, sometimes it takes coaching or therapy or something like that to hold it all. But imagine the people we are if we weren't triggered by our triggers. Imagine the people that we are if we weren't, right, pulled up, right, just reacting instinctively and reflexively without even realizing that this is what's actually going on. Right. And so a lot of times it becomes about the outside and it becomes about the other person and it becomes about strategies, right? Strategies to either keep it down or communicate better or, right. Or like, if I fix my job, this and that. And I'm not saying that we should never change our circumstances. I think that sometimes we do need to change our circumstances, but we want to, while we're in the circumstance, particularly if we can't change the circumstances, right? We want to, right? And if I can't change the circumstances immediately, that means that this is required for me, right? This is required for me because of what, right? What the growth that I have over here, the opportunity that I have over here to notice my trigger, right? To notice my trigger, right? My automatic trigger, whether it's in my beliefs or whether it's in, right, my limiting beliefs or whether it's in my instinctive emotions and perceptions, notice it and hold it, deal with it, clear it, right? And all of that. So that's right. To me, when I explore dots a little bit and presence a little bit, to me, this makes sense that this would be a really cool roadmap for personal growth. So I'm curious if anybody wants to kind of jump in, bring something up, or I would like to actually give some examples, that I work with in my, my practice and myself and all that, but I'm happy to take your specific examples if you want. So here we have somebody here. So I was trying to do something good and was really hoping my wife would be on board, but instead she got annoyed that our summer schedule got changed. Perfect. Okay. So I was trying to do something good. I'm assuming for your wife, right? Hoping that she would good for your wife or for the family, right? And instead she got annoyed that our summer schedule got changed, right? So let's use this as a perfect example, right? So in this scenario, our old growth mindset would be nice to the wife, even though she's annoyed, right? So in this kind of deeper mindset, I want to know what's coming up for you when your wife gets annoyed, meaning what comes up for you. Right. So, and I'm talking to all of us because we can all relate. It's a great example, right? What would come up for me if my husband was annoyed is I don't feel appreciated, right? I don't feel appreciated. And maybe I don't feel like I can ever please her, right? And then this would start to be, right? This would start to be something about me, right? My fear of not being valued, right? My fear of not being valued, or my fear of being taken for granted or taken advantage of, right? And my belief system might be, right, people don't appreciate me, right? And then you really want to try to trace it back, like do a little digging. Ask yourself, when do I remember feeling this way in the past, besides for with our spouse, right? Do I remember as a kid, right? Is this a theme that came from when I was younger, right? Of not being able to, right? Of not being able to please? Is this a belief system that I'm not appreciated, or that people take advantage of me, or something like that, right? Sort of tracing it back so that we have clarity that this is not a, right? This is not, and again, it doesn't mean that every single interaction, right, traces back to deeper childhood, core wounds or core beliefs, but it's very common. It's very, right. There are themes, right? There are themes. I was working with a client this week who she it was very similar actually. She created a really nice night for her husband, and she was very excited about it. And then, like at midnight, you can all maybe picture the scene. A lot of us are married or been in relationships, and he had to run out. Right, he had to run out at midnight, and she was beside herself, like she was going to murder this guy, right? And so, the first thing that we talked about was that wasn't nice. Like let's agree that, right, it wasn't nice. He actually left. He had to leave the house, right? So I'm not diminishing, God forbid, that was a painful experience, but it's possible. It's possible that somebody might see this experience as a level two, right, a level two, right, experience, right? We can all agree that it's not a nice thing if somebody created a nice night for you and then you just walk out, right? We can all agree that it's not nice, but it's possible that somebody could perceive it as a level two slight, right? This was for her a level 10. She was like, she's out, like she was going to murder this guy, right? So when we explored it a little deeper, I asked her to just go inside and feel what she's feeling in her body, right? And she felt it. And I asked her to trace back, when does she remember feeling that way? And it brought back a memory of when her mother was in the hospital, and her mother was in the hospital, and she had gone through like a little bit of like I'll be blunt, but like a sexual trauma where somebody had come up and like sort of invaded her space physically. Someone had come into her house, and right, and she felt very unprotected. And then her mother ended up in the hospital, and really wasn't there for her as she was needed. And this feeling of being abandoned and helpless, right, this feeling of being abandoned and helpless came up for her, right? And so, right, and also of not trusting, right, and of not trusting men, right? And so this happened to her when she was about 15 or 16 years old. It's right. It's so her husband walking away at midnight brought up this feeling of being abandoned, right, and of right of just being abandoned. There's no right, abandoned or rejected, and also this underlying fear of men that was never really processed. And so that makes sense then, right? Now it makes sense that she's having a level 10 reaction to something that someone else could have perceived as a level 2 or a level 3, right? And so that's awareness, right? So I'm not, okay, unfortunately she did act instinctively, and she was triggered, and she gave it to him in a way that really did do damage, right? But the work in this situation, right, had we rewound it, it wouldn't be necessarily to keep quiet, to swallow it, to communicate effectively. The first work would be to figure out, what is this, right? Something is happening on the outside that's bringing up something on the inside, thoughts or feelings that need to, right, that still haven't been held, or still haven't been seen, or still haven't been processed. Once I have that awareness, right, communication will be easier for her husband, right? If we could have rewound it, right? Because it wouldn't be about biting her tongue or saying it nicely or whatever, because she would realize that 20% of this is him, and 80% of this is right is stuff that's going on there, and it would take it off of him, right? It would take it off of the thing he did to me, and it would bring it back to our personal work and our personal rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. So thank you for the person who threw that example into the chat. I think it was helpful. If anybody else has things kind of on their mind that come up, that trigger them, that they kind of want to process in this session, that would be cool, and I think beneficial for everybody. I'll give it a minute for those of you who might be typing. I think it could be helpful. Or if you want to unmute yourself, and if you feel comfortable to unmute yourself and kind of bring something up, we could maybe explore it. So for me, I'll just give examples that I prepared while if anybody's writing or wants to type. For me, I see a lot. I see a lot of struggle with setting boundaries and expressing needs, and saying what's really on our minds. So we do what we think we have to do. We feel guilty if we don't do it because we feel like we're letting someone down or whatever it is, right? And then we end up in these situations where we're resentful and overextended and right and then mad at the other person, right? And so we might think that our work is to be nicer people, right? And we might, right, we don't, and not be so resentful. And it's possible that that could be the work also, right? But why is this coming up for me, or for so many people? This idea of not being able to say no, or to set an effective boundary, right? And so when we feel this, so I ask my clients, right, and I do this for myself also. I ask myself, what comes up for me inside, right? When I want to say no, but I feel like I can't say no, right? So the first thing that oftentimes comes up is, right, I'm scared, right? And I don't want to feel guilty. She's going to make me feel guilty, right? I don't want to feel guilty. I don't want to feel bad. And right. And then kind of going in and thinking to ourselves, like, where did this come from? Right? Where did this come from? This belief of I have to say yes, or it's not okay to say no, or it's not okay to express my needs, right? Or I won't be loved. I won't be loved or accepted unless I say yes to everything, right? And this idea of conditional love. And oftentimes we could trace back this, right? The feeling would be maybe a feeling of guilt or fear, and we could trace it back to an experience where we felt like like love could be taken away, or it was conditional, right? And so then realizing that it's not the other person that's making me feel guilty, right? It's a guilt that I'm carrying that's waiting to be felt, right? So that it could be seen, and to feel that it's okay and I am enough, and that and I am acceptable, right? And so the answer is not to say yes or to be kinder, right? And it's not to be mean or say no either. The answer is to explore. The answer is to really explore what's coming up for me. What's right? What's that guilt about? What's that belief about? Right. And right, for the beliefs to really start to look at them and question them, see if they're really facts, or if we just, things that we adopted, for lack of better ability when we were small. Right. And the emotion that comes along with those beliefs also, right? Where's that stemming from, and why does it sound familiar? Right. And I think that on a really profound level, which could be spiritual, it could be, for those of us who are God-fearing, we could say it's from Hashem, but to a certain extent, I believe that our outside life is a subconscious right? Our subconscious manifests situations that will allow our unprocessed feelings and allow our limiting beliefs to be triggered on purpose, because they're just waiting to be processed and to be seen and to be come to with presence, rather than instinctively, or rather than being shut down, right? So when we're small, a lot of times, we're taught, don't feel that way, you shouldn't feel that way, you're not supposed to feel that way, you're supposed to be happy, right? Right, all these things, which means that all the emotions, right, a lot of our emotions, in a book that I'm reading, it says that by 7, and this was so tragic, by 7, by school age, we've basically learned to suppress all our emotions, right, because we got to go to school, right, and we can't cry, and no one's there, right? And this is even in functional homes. I'm not talking about dysfunctional homes. I'm talking about in like real functional families, right? By the time we're school age, we really can't feel our feelings fully, because right? Imagine if we would feel them every time, right? So we'd be a mess. We'd be weak. We'd be crying. We'd be shamed. We'd be blamed. We'd be told not to. We'd be told, right? So by 7 years old, by school age, we really learned to suppress it all and to keep it all down, which to me was like, mind blowing to think about how much is being suppressed. And this is just in, I'm not talking about in situations of trauma or, low, dysfunction or anything like that. So there's so much there that's just waiting right now. The same way, if I get a cut on my skin, it heals over time, right? The body regenerates and the body heals. That's the miracle of our body, right? It moves towards healings. If I catch a cold, my white blood cells come and I don't know what they do, but maybe but right, but they, right, a whole army, a whole team of army comes to fight infections and all of that, right? And right, right, assuming everything is in working order, the body really does heal itself. And I don't believe that there's a big distinction between physical and emotional, right? And so our body, our hurts, our inner hurts, right? The feelings that were repressed, and right, and the shame and the pain and the guilt and the fear is all just waiting to be healed, It's waiting to be healed, which means that on a subconscious level, we may be manufacturing outer experiences that will allow these inner hurts to come up on purpose. Why? Why now? Because as adults, we actually have the capacity that we didn't have as a child, right? I think we all operate under the belief that a feeling that's fully felt is out. Yes, we cry, we have a good cry, we're good to go, right? So so all this energy of these stored emotions that were never fully felt are sort of just waiting there, right? And they're waiting there, but the way they heal is by feeling them, right? And but from a presence and from a safety. As a child, it may be too overwhelming. We may be told not to feel that way. It could be that we don't have, not could be 100% for sure. We don't have the capacity to hold all our feelings by ourselves. And so we put them down, we shove them down. We blame ourselves, we shame ourselves, right? We blame others, we shame others. Right. But really what it really just needs is that it comes up and is fully felt. If I don't do that, right, my subconscious will create outside that will then trigger this insight. And so I believe, right, and again, I'm not being trite and I'm not dismissing people's, real lifelong struggles and all of that. But even if we could take this home a little bit today, which is, why do I need to be in this situation right now? I don't know. I don't understand God's ways. But if I'm in it, it must be required, right? And the way that I could frame it is that it's triggering me, so that it's allowing stuff to come up for me so that I could come at it with presence, with dot, rather than shoving it down or rather than just reacting instinctively. So I'm just gonna go to the chat because there's some questions here. Let's see what this is. My ex-wife continually gaslights and embarrasses me in public via email, I guess because it's a chain of email and all of this. So there's specific examples in this message, but I'm just going to take the basics of this because I think that we can all relate. I want to make it, as relatable as possible. So imagine you have a narcissist in your life, okay? Right. So, or somebody that is hell-bent on, hell-bent on, shaming you, destroying you, smear campaign, right? Or even just a difficult person that like intentionally embarrasses you. Okay. And I think that there could be, right. I think that this could be relatable to a lot of people, or try to make it relatable. Right. And right. So I could look at her behaviors and I could say she's crazy. I could say she's evil, right? That would cause me a lot of pain, right? I could say she's sick. That might cause me a little bit less pain, right? I could say she doesn't exist and it's just God. And that might, right, it's just God and she's the messenger, because we know that I wouldn't have even one iota of pain without it being allowed. But all those things don't address my dot, right? So I could say she's not well. I could say it's from Hashem. I could say she's just the messenger. But now I want to know, not just that she's not the messenger, not just that she's just, the messenger, but what is my message? So what comes up for me when she shames me in public? On an email thread? What comes up for me when I get embarrassed, right? So first I want to find that sensation of shame in my body. I want to trace that back, see how deeply rooted that might be, see what it reminds you of. And sometimes this is very, very painful. It needs to be coached with. I do this in my practice, right? But I want to give you at least the basics of find that sensation of shame. Shame is usually here, right? Over there, right? Finding that sensation of shame, right? Seeing where it might be rooted, and seeing what might need to be processed that was unprocessed for me, maybe somewhere between the ages of 6 and 13, or sometimes it's even, right? And then what beliefs do I attach to it that have nothing to do with her, right? My beliefs are, right, I won't be respected, right? And so she's triggering, right, and or our subconscious, right, our subconscious is creating on the outside a situation where I can now feel shamed, right, feel shamed, and maybe, right, this limiting belief of I won't be respected. And how far back does that go? And I'm not going to say that for everybody it has nothing to do with the circumstances, it always goes back, but try to trace it back. When do I remember first feeling this way, right? But not being okay with it. Because when we're little, right, right, emotional pain is life and death. As adults, it's not. As adults, we learn to hold it and we learn to carry it and we learn to be okay with it. And, this is what I do a lot in the coaching, right? But when we're little, we're in a fight or flight response oftentimes when we're in shame or fear, right? And if nobody's helping us and nobody's holding it with us, right? So we learn all sorts of tactics to become tougher, maybe, or to become stronger, maybe, or to right, or to shove it down, or to disembody, or to escape, right? All sorts of right, but right, but I before all the escaping and before all the disembodying and before all the shoving it down, right? There was probably a moment that was shameful, right? Or a moment where you realize that you're not going to get respect, right? And that's waiting. It's just waiting to be felt, to come up, to be held by you as an adult now, where it wasn't right. We might not have been capable, right? With the understanding of that, a feeling that is fully felt and held and right and allowed come right is that's what gives it the energy to burn through, move out, integrate, digest, all of that, right? And so coming at it with the presence of your adult self and with the okayness of, even though I'm embarrassed, it's okay. Imagine that. Imagine if it's okay. It's not when we're six, right? It's death, right? Everyone has their most embarrassing moment, burns into their brain, right? Burns into their brain, right? I think every one of us could remember a moment of burn into our brain that where what did we say? I wanted to die, right? How many of us could remember our most embarrassing moments? And right, and I wanted to die. I wanted to die, right? I want, right? It felt like life and death because it was so shameful, right? And it felt, and I never want to feel that way again. And I want to create my whole life so that I never feel that way again. And people create a whole life just based on not feeling their pains of their, childhood, of rejection, shame, guilt, fear, all of that. Right. So going back into this specific example, yes, my ex-wife is shaming me, right? And it could be a level 2 shame and it could be a level 10 shame and, and all of that. But I'm much more curious for me about what's coming up for me, that what needs to be held for me, what needs to be, what needs my presence, right? Imagine if you hold that shame and it's okay. One of two things happen, right? Either it's fully felt and it's out, or you get really good at holding it so it doesn't, right? It doesn't matter to you anymore. It doesn't trigger you as much either, right? So either way you win, right? So I think that's a great example of someone actually, she is doing something that would cause most people a tremendous amount of pain, but I don't control other people, right? And so a level would be, I accept this because it's from God, but I think the rebuilding of the temple that we're talking about, the personal growth that we're talking about, could become so much deeper, because imagine clearing all this, right? Imagine this stuff can come up and we can actually clear it out. Imagine how much space we have inside when our triggers are cleared out, when our old emotions are cleared out, when our old thought, right? Imagine our head being empty of our limiting beliefs and our doubts and our, right? And I'm not enough, or I have to people please, or right, all the common limiting beliefs, right? I have to be perfect. I won't be lovable unless I'm perfect, right? All these right, I'll lose control, I won't have control, right? All these limiting beliefs, they're not specific to the circumstance, they're hanging out there, they're living there rent free, waiting to be held. Imagine all that is cleared out, right? And imagine in our hearts everything that right triggers us at level 10, right? We start to allow it to come up. We start to see that maybe it's trying to heal, maybe it's required, maybe it's from the outside allowing us to heal, and right, starting to see it from that perspective. I think we have a little more time if anyone wants to have bring up maybe one more thing. I think that I appreciate those of you that did share, because I think it lends a lot more context to what we're talking about. I also want to mention before we close out that I do have a little worksheet that I created that just, what's the outside trigger, what's coming up for me physically, what's coming up emotionally, like that. So if anybody would like that, just email me afterwards and I'll try to get it for you. Right now it's by my graphics person trying to make it a little prettier, but I can send it to you also. So anybody, we have a couple more minutes if anyone wants to kind of share and bring up maybe something going on in their life that we could maybe get some dot about. Or any questions. If anyone just has any questions about what I said, if anything was unclear, or if you want me to elaborate a bit. Give it a minute. Oh, okay. Awesome question. I was hoping someone would ask that. How to process the feelings that you're aware of, right? Meaning, so we talked about like the what we're trying to do. We didn't talk too much about the how, right? How has a lot of different ways. This, I do this in my sessions one-on-one, and I'm God willing going to be doing it in a group too. But I don't pretend that I have all the answers, but I can give you some, some insight into how we process the feelings. So the first thing, I know I said this a couple of times, but it bears repeating, is that a feeling that is fully felt is integrated and it's out, right? And so just by noticing, hey, something on the outside caused something in me, and now I'm aware of this emotion, right? Generally speaking, we don't like our uncomfortable emotions. We don't like them at all. In fact, we can create whole lives around not feeling them, right? We can create, right? People do, right? I'm not talking about just addicts, right? But right, addicts for sure that are just, don't want to feel their feelings. But right, addict is like a harsh word, but a lot of us are addicts, right? And it could be scrolling, it could be working, it could be right, it could be shopping, it could be right. So right, there's a million ways, right? I think my first book is 52, 52 mindsets. My next book maybe is 101 ways to not feel our feelings. Right. And so we have all sorts of external escape things, and we have, on a very dysregulated level, we could be disembodied, right? But also just overworking, right? Perfectionism, right? What's perfectionism? Perfectionism, I got to get it perfect, because if I don't get it perfect, I will feel like a failure, right? Or unlovable. And I don't want to ever feel that way. And so I can work really hard on perfectionism, or right, this is right, perfectionism is a lifetime job. It's so overwhelming, but it's just to avoid the feeling of right, of inadequacy, or of right, or of failure, or of not being enough, or how, we can phrase it in multiple different ways, right? So the first thing, and I think the biggest piece, Rachel, and I hope this answers your question, but everybody, right, is that when I get triggered on the outside, or something inside of me, I feel something, I think something, noticing that it's not the outside person, it's not the circumstance, that there's something going on here for me, and then allowing that feeling to be there allows it to be felt, right? The reason it's living inside of us, right? Why is it living there? It's because energy that got stored, that never got processed, right? Not all our feelings live there, right? The ones that we cry out, or right, or whatever, right? So those don't live there, right? So just allowing them gives them the opportunity to process. Now, a lot of times we're afraid to allow them. There's a lot of pain that, that's a lot of times buried very, very, very deep. So there's coaching methodologies, and there's therapeutic modalities that kind of allow this in a more gentle, therapeutic way, but also a deeper way. But just allowing the feeling to come up and be there. Now, we're there with our presence, right? Which means I notice it, I'm aware of it, I'm conscious of it, but I'm not reacting to it, right? What do we usually do all day? How many of you are in a relaxed body? How many of us are braced? Wiggle your hands, release the tension from your shoulders, release the tension from your tummy, release the tension from your lower back, release the tension from your knees, drop it all, free yourself of it. How much tension did we all just drop? Pounds. Right? We brace ourselves all the time, right? We brace ourselves. I'm bracing myself that I shouldn't say something stupid. You're bracing yourself for me that I shouldn't say something, I don't know, right? I'm bracing myself that somebody shouldn't interrupt me, right? We're bracing ourselves all the time. Whenever we're braced, we're giving our body the message that we're not safe, right? And whenever we're escaping our feelings, we're giving our message, our emotions, the message that it's not time yet, it's not safe, right? So just relaxing, allowing the emotions without reacting because of it, even if it's painful, is huge. And again, I'm talking high level because, right, this is personal growth. This is not therapy, right? So on high level, we could do this for ourselves, right? You embarrass me, right? I could forgive you. I could, or I could not make it about you. I can make it about what's coming up for me, right? I could do my own work, right? And what's the work? Just allow the embarrassment. Imagine that. Now, nobody wants to be embarrassed. Nobody's asking for it. But if it's there, the best thing that we could do for it is to allow it and feel it, because then it burns through, right? Only feelings that are pushed down, rejected, shame, blame, distracted, those are the ones living inside of us. But the ones that we fully felt until they burn through are gone. Are gone, right? So really, in a one-word answer, the way we process a feeling that we become aware of, the first step is the awareness, right? And it's not just the feeling, it's also the limiting beliefs, is just to allow it with acceptance. That's step one. and try to do it in a relaxed body. Because if you tell your body that it's okay to feel it, but you also giving subconsciously or physiologically, you're giving the message of this is not safe, my breathing's shallow, my body's braced, it's not really allowing it, right? And we can't be in an aroused state of where the amygdala fight or flight response and in a conscious dot non-reflexive state at the same time. It's one or the other. It's reflex and instinct, which is the animal brain, and it's right, and it's the processing brain that's doing the work to see if we're actually safe. Right, when one's up, the other one is down. Right, so when my body is relaxed and my breathing is steady and I'm not in a hyper aroused fight or flight state, and then I allow this emotion to be, I give the emotion a message that the body's safe, and I don't react. I don't react by bracing, and I don't react by distracting, and I don't react by shaming or blaming. I just allow it to flow through. And again, this takes a lot of, this is basically like, trauma therapy 101 for a lot of people, but I'm talking about like on just a very like doable level. Right. My husband says something that triggers me. My boss says something that triggers me. My teenager disrespects me. Right. My teenager disrespects me. Right. I could yell at him. That's just instinctive. I could work on being nicer. That would be wise. Right. I could work on seeing that Hashem's giving me this challenge. That'd be great. But what if I ask myself, when my teenager doesn't listen to me, what comes up for me? Usually helplessness. Right? Helplessness. I want to protect him and I can't, right? Or I have a vision for him that I think is good and I can't make him, right? Helplessness or fear. Right. So you just said it, or fear, right? So then this is not even about the teenager. The teenager is the vehicle on the outside that allows me to access my helplessness and fear that's been living inside of me, that's waiting to be held, processed, right? And all of that. That's dot. That's dot. And when I do my work, right, when I address my fear, when I hold my fear, when I address my helplessness, when I hold my helplessness and I come to dot, my outer circumstances will automatically change. They'll automatically change because they're only there. Again, I'm not saying I understand God's ways, so I shouldn't say only there. But one of the reasons they're there is because they're required. Right? They're required for us for some reason, right? If this is happening, it's required. It doesn't mean I want it. It doesn't mean I need it, right? Right? I don't know what the word need means, but it's life gives us what we require. Our subconscious might have manifested it, or Hashem gave it to us, however you want to say it, but it's required so that I can activate my fear and my helplessness, not so that I feel fear and helpless all the time, so that I could come to the presence of dot and as an adult right now and just be conscious of it, hold it, and allow it, and all that. So we can all right see this kind of as our personal rebuilding of our temple, between our temples, right? This is our temple right here. It's in our limiting beliefs, and it's also in our in our body and all that. And so if we walk away with one thing from this workshop, it's that when we have things going on outside that feel like challenges, get curious about what's going on, right? What's going on for me on the inside. See it as the required trigger to bring something up inside of me, and see if I could do some, have some presence about that and some dot about that. And God willing, that will level us up big time, big time, big time. Right? Imagine really doing this, right? Imagine doing this consistently in all your relationships, right? And in all of that, right? It changes us, right? And then all these things like being done the kafschus and right, and all these things become easier, right? Because right, if I'm not reacting to somebody at a level 10 because of my triggers and the extra charge that's been waiting, right? I'll react, right? Then it's not so hard to be done the kafschus because I'm not, right? I'm not like that. Right. So all these things, yes, it's going to be recorded. Right. So all the things that we do work on, which is right, patience and kindness and all the midos that we work on all the time, all those things become so much more doable because I'm not as reactive, and because I'm not, acting instinctively or acting out on my triggers and my, and my own personal pain and my own personal story. So God willing, we should all rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, the actual physical one, in our days, but at least our own personal temple. If anybody has anything that they feel was not addressed, please feel free to email me. Most of you know where to find me.